Hello, welcome everyone to the Unidentified Celebrity Review. I am Luis Jimenez. I am humbled to be here. Honestly, I never thought I would do anything like this, and here I am. I'm giving it a shot, putting myself out there, talking about a weird topic and mixing it up with the business that I'm very familiar with, which is why I'm out here and why I'm doing this episode. I wanted to tell you in this first episode all about me. Hopefully this is the first episode where, or the only episode, where I'm by myself. You know, hopefully every episode will have someone here in this chair with me, joining me on the fun conversation. This first episode, I just wanted to give you me, just, for an archive purpose. If anybody is new to the channel down the road and they want to know who I am and why I started this channel, this is the first episode you should start with. So welcome. Welcome to the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Again, my name's Luis Jimenez. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. But before we get started, I wanted to say thank you to our sponsor, which is right here on the front of the computer, BlueMarlinChronicles.com. This is Scepter Rods, one of the fishing reels that is sold on the website. So if you're into saltwater fishing, please go check it out. Tell them Lewis sent you. And so here we are, guys. We've got two microphones. We've got two chairs. The whole thing is set up. I've gone back and forth with the set. I mean, I'm pretty set on the pictures. I'll tell you all about those. Before we get started, remember, like the channel, subscribe, share with any friend that you think might gain some knowledge from this. Ring that notification bell so that way anytime a new video or a podcast drops, you know. We have a website up which has got links to the podcast. So if you can't watch on YouTube, you can check us out on the podcast anywhere you go. We've got links to my IMDb, who I am, what this channel is. It's sort of like a mixture of my acting career and this new part of my life that I'm starting on YouTube. So check out the website. I wanted to talk about what I basically, the sort of the crystallized goal of the channel. And that is I want actors, producers, writers that are friends or friends of friends that have either had an experience or have never had an experience, who know about the topic or don't know about the topic. Just as long as you're in the business, I'd love to talk to you. Hopefully this channel also answers some questions for folks who maybe don't live in Los Angeles. Some, theater nerd kids, or, kids that are messing with their movie cameras, or, I know when I was a kid, I mess with video cameras all the time. I've got a collection of video cameras in my bedroom that go back all the way to 1997, as I used to edit on reel-to-reel. So I've always had a love for cinema. I've always had a love for the arts. In doing that, I also fell in love with the other side of the camera, the acting part of it, and I've done a lot of improv theater training and work over the last almost now 20 years. So if you're curious about Los Angeles, if you're curious about what it takes to be an actor out here, very difficult business. If you want to be an actor, get ready to hear the word no a lot. Even if you're a great actor, sometimes it doesn't happen for a long time. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all. Sometimes it happens right when you get here, and then nothing happens. And, I've got some stories that I'm going to share with you guys today. So let's get into it. My full name is Luis Victor Jimenez. I was born in Miami, Florida, Mercy Hospital, August 4th, 1980. Yes, I am 39 years old. I am going on 40. So needless to say, I was born an 80s kid. I grew up with a lot of, in the era of cable television. The idea of more than 4 or 5 channels on TV. I grew up in the era of Ted Turner starting CNN, Rupert Murdoch starting Fox News, the hip hop, 90s hip hop and the 80s hip hop era. I've witnessed the Challenger explode. Holy cow. That's how old I am. So yeah, so those are just a couple of things to tell you how old I am. So I was born in Miami, Florida, to a Cuban mother and father. They were young, incredibly young parents. They had me when my mom had me when she was 20. You know, she's only 20 years older than me. She was born in February 1960. I was born in August of 1980. So we're very close. Her and my father split when I was 7 years old. It was an ugly divorce. You know, a lot of crazy stuff happened. But it molded me into who I am today. And it sort of, weirdly enough, diverted me into a love of film, because I ended up watching movies with my mom's boyfriend, who eventually became my stepfather, who was a robbery detective at Metro Tate Police Department. And so I got to watch a lot of movies with him. Remember the first movie he introduced me to, when he was like introducing himself to me, say, "Hey, you want to watch a movie? RoboCop." So we watched RoboCop together. And then my real father, who is a retired respiratory therapist of Cuban descent, he's an interesting character. He is very, very young at heart, loves to have a good time, and also shaped my love for cinema. I remember one of the first things when I was young, we used to do a lot of fishing. And I did a lot of fishing all basically high school. I haven't done fishing in a while. I'd love to get back into it. I've got my fishing pole ready to go. He's like, "You want to watch a movie about fishing?" I was like, "Yeah, Jaws." So, you know, those are like the movie directions I was basically given. So I'm a nerd at heart. I'm an 80s baby. I don't know if I'm Generation X or Generation Y, or I'm definitely not a millennial. Love watching anything geeky. Love video games. Grew up with Nintendo. I still game today, which is hilarious to talk to other gamers. Another thing that just tells you how old I am. You know, when I play video games, the kids are like 17, 18. They're like, "How old are you?" I'm like, 39. They freak out when I tell them how old I am. I'm like, "Listen, man, I started with Nintendo. I'm old school, baby. You know, 8-bit, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo. I had them all, man." I'm a geek at heart. I love to do models and Lego. I didn't grow up in Miami. Most of my childhood I spent in a place that's just north of Miami, in the suburbs of Fort Lauderdale, a place called Cooper City, Florida. Very, I wouldn't say it's a small neighborhood, but it's a incredibly fast growing neighborhood. It's a lot bigger and more dense and populated than it was when I lived there. And I just went back last Thanksgiving. There's so much construction and so much being added there. It used to be, people used to literally ride their horses to school and tie them up. Our high school mascot was a Cooper City Cowboy. I played football. Our football team was terrible. I was not the greatest football player, but I did love playing football. But also when I was in high school, I did a lot of video production. I did a weekly sports program that I got awarded for. I got a half scholarship to the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale. I had a couple of scholarships offers for football, but they were all Division III and places that were very, very cold. So decided to not go the football route. Went to college for a couple of years and just got incredibly bored with it. I was pretty decent in school. I think I would have had a very decent GPA if it wasn't for algebra. I wouldn't have been valedictorian, but it would have been pretty decent. After college, or I basically dropped out of college, and I was doing, but before I did that, at the same time, I was doing improv comedy at a little theater in Miami, Florida called Just the Funny Improv Theater. They now have a really wonderful theater down there. So if you're in the Miami area, if you're an actor, if you want to do some improv, like Whose Line Is It Anyway, go check them out. They're a wonderful little program in school now. They're basically like a Second City South. I'll link the website in the description below. So I started doing improv there. We ended up having a class, an improv teacher by the name of Mike Delaney. Mike Delaney at the time was a writer on Conan O'Brien. He sometimes would show up on the show. He was part of an improv team called The Swarm at the UCB New York when he came and taught us. And he had a 4-hour class, and at the end of the class, he's like, hey, pulled me aside. He's like, I think you do well in New York. You should move up to New York and do some improv. So just based off of that, I literally moved out of my best friend's apartment, moved back home for 3 months, saved as much money as I possibly could, found an apartment on what was then Craigslist. I don't even know if Craigslist still exists. I would assume it does, but yeah, at the time you could find anything you want on Craigslist. It was the early 2000s, and the internet was the wild, wild west. It was incredible. So I found a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 roommates in Forest Hills, Queens. And I packed up my bags and I told my family what I was doing. I transferred jobs to New York. And right before I left, I met these group of guys. The first guy was Joe Tex. The second guy was Jay Painter. And the third guy was Eric Robinson. I met these 3 guys through a good friend of mine in Florida named Ed Zeldner. And Ed Zeldner and Joe Tex are direct descendants of Del Close. Del Close wrote Truth and Comedy, which is the improv Bible. If you want to do improv comedy or theater, recommend highly you check out that book. And they were direct descendants of his teachings, so they were very, very good friends. They introduced me to those 3 guys because they were living at the time in New York City doing an improv show in Port Jefferson, Long Island, called Face Off. So they, we hit it off naturally. And when I went up there, I met those guys out there in a church across the street from the Theater 3 in Port Jefferson. And I auditioned for them. And the next day they called me and they're like, hey, we'd love for you to join our improv group. And I basically did improv with those guys for almost 7 straight years. We ended up doing a lot of fun projects together. I learned a lot of fun stuff. We did a ton of stage productions that raised money for charity. And I dabbled a little bit in the Upright Citizens Brigade. I went to a lot of shows. I did a lot of shows in the city around the theater. We would do open mics and jams and things like that. But I had a lot of my focus on Face Off, and eventually they ended up starting an amazing show that is in New York City right now in Soho called Batsu. So if you're ever in New York City and you want to see the best short form improv that money could possibly buy, you should go there. Also, just a shot across the bow. This idea that theaters can't pay their improvisers, they break that mold. They're charging $60, $80, I think maybe $100 a ticket. Again, I'll link their description or their website, tickets to their show in the description below. So you can check out Face Off Unlimited show called Batsu. It's in Chicago and it's in New York City. This show is gangbusters. So highly, highly, highly recommend it. And if you're also looking to learn improv, they're a great school to go to and learn improv. And they've got some wonderful internships and just real ways to sort of grow through a theater as opposed to just being, just another student who paid their tuition. And, it's just very overcrowded. This is sort of like an improv training school / very successful show that, if you spend time in and you invest your time, you can really grow within a company. So that's a cool little company theater you guys should check out. So I did a lot of work with those guys. And I also, at the same time, I was doing commercials and little short films with a good friend of mine. His name's Nick Sinakis. We did so many awesome little fun short films that helped us grow as artists. We were shooting it. We were buying the cameras. We were using our computers. We were buying all of the equipment that we needed to do it. We were trying to find extra copies of Final Cut Pro to put on my laptop and edit. And we sat in Nick's basement for a whole summer editing, a short television pilot that we shot called Life Behind Bars. And we grew a lot. We ended up, after 7 years in New York City, ended up moving to Los Angeles in 2010 with Nick and his cousin Paul. Paul's a writer. And Nick obviously is well, not obviously, you don't know, but Nick's a director, and he's also an actor here in Los Angeles, and he's got a really awesome movie on Amazon right now. I'm sorry I'm making so many plugs. I'm also going to link the description and link the movie, the Amazon Prime link to his film called My Best Friend's Famous. If you want to see something funny on Amazon, it's included if you have Amazon, so check it out. I will link it down below. Again, this is hilarious. And as I'm talking about this story, it's just funny how these things connect. So we find a place to live out here. Nick actually found the place. The first 2 weeks I'm living here, I'm looking for a job. And where am I looking? Craigslist. This is 2010. And I was also looking for a mode of transportation. In Los Angeles, you can take the bus, you can take public transportation, but honestly, it is a nightmare. It's a nightmare if you have a car here. I found a Honda 150cc scooter that I was driving for the first 2 or 3 weeks I lived here. I bought it, and I was like, well, this is what I need. I need to get around town, and honestly, the best way to get around this town is a scooter. Without a doubt, I can get anywhere I want in this town in 30 minutes or less in a scooter. I don't have to wait in traffic. It is an awesome mode of transportation, but incredibly dangerous. Incredibly dangerous. So you got to really be on your toes. Thankfully, I never got in an accident, although I do have a friend and a future guest who, by the way, I've already confirmed one of our guests very soon that we'll be talking to is Jake Matthews. Jake is just now getting over a scooter accident. He actually was consulting me on what kind of scooter he should get, and poor guy got in an accident, and maybe we'll talk about that when he's on the show. I haven't seen him since the accident, so thankfully he's okay. He's all mended up. We'll talk about it when he's here. He's a phenomenal actor. And beyond anything else, he's one of my best friends and just an amazing person. So we'll get to know him as soon as he's here. But that's down the road, and that's very soon. So anyway, I digress. I'm looking at Craigslist, and in the jobs section under acting was a post that read something along the lines of, do you own a scooter? Tom Hanks is looking for a scooter gang for a new movie that he's directing. If you qualify under these conditions, and you had to have a license, you had to have a scooter, obviously, a helmet, and there was a couple other things. So I was like, it was like one of the clearest moments of my life. I was like, what are the odds that I moved to Los Angeles, buy a scooter, and the very first audition that I see, no agent, no nothing, is an audition for Tom Hanks. So I was like, gotta go. I look at Nick. I'm like, Nick, gotta go. He's like, you gotta go. So the audition was in Ventura. I lived in West Hollywood. If you know anything about Hollywood, you know that means you have to go over one of the one of the canyon roads, Coldwater Canyon, Laurel Canyon. There's like 15 canyon roads. There's a lot of them, but they're very, very, very old roads. They're very broken up. They almost look like Italian. I've never been to Europe, but the thing that I imagine every time I drive through them is like Italian streets that are incredibly skinny that only fit one car, and the streets might as well be made of cobble, might as well be. So I'm driving, and meanwhile, this is like the first 2 weeks. I haven't really taken this scooter like out because I'm still learning it, and I'm kind of nervous driving around. So the audition's super early in the morning. And I drive this little scooter over the Coldwater Canyon Road. And with my big butt on it. I struggled to get over the hill. But we got over, and it was at the Sportsman's Lodge, the audition. So I get there, and there's a whole bunch of cones, and there's a couple production guys, and you don't know who any of these people are, but basically they put me in a line, and they're like, once I get up to the point, they're like, okay, you got your license? Yeah. You got your helmet? Yeah. Okay, what I want you to do, or, they asked me, I think, like, how long you been riding? I was like, I just moved here, just bought this thing. Like, okay, go down to that cone down there, do a figure 8 around that, and then come back. And so I did the figure 8 or whatever, came back. And then somebody yelled, hey, you, come here, pulled me aside. And they started asking me a whole bunch of questions. Honestly, I can't remember what they were asking me, but they're like, can you be at this address on, I think it was, the audition was on a Saturday. So they were like, can you be at this address on Monday? I think the audition was like at 11:30 in the morning. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Of course I can be there. And I'm like, hey, I think I just got an audition. But I don't know really what for. And it's like, well, when is it? I was like, Monday, 11:30. He's like, well, you want to ride? I was like, yeah, I'll take a ride to an audition. So the day of the audition, I get a phone call, and it's Judy Boulay, very just beautiful, wonderful woman, who called me up. Or she didn't call me, excuse me. Now as I'm remembering, there was no script. They just said, show up at this place. So I showed up there. I get there, and she's like, we have no lines. We want you to improvise a scene where you are in a class giving a speech about something that you know, or maybe don't know, like something simple, like how to change a tire or how to make pancakes in the morning. I was like, okay. And she's like, and you could play it however you want. You could be nervous. You can be confident in the information you're giving. You could be confident. You might be scared, talking in front of people. So there was a lot of options. She gave me the freedom to do whatever I wanted. So I think, if I remember correctly, I just started spewing about video games. Because I know that topic very well, and I played it incredibly nervous because, truth be told, I was kind of nervous. It was my first major audition. And so, I do the audition, and she's like, that was amazing. She's like, are you available tomorrow? I was like, yeah, I'm available tomorrow. She's like, okay, great. Just in case we need you, which I don't think we do, we'd love to maybe see you tomorrow. I was like, okay, no problem. But she's like, I think Tom is going to love you. I was like, okay, oh, this is going to Tom Hanks. So she sends the footage. I leave, and I get in the car, and I'm like, I look over at Nick, and I'm like, I think I just auditioned for Tom Hanks. He's like, what do you mean? And I told him the whole story, and he's like, yeah, I think they definitely sent your tape over to Tom Hanks. When they say Tom, that had to have been him. There's nobody else it could be. He's directing the film. It's his second directorial film that he did. First, That Thing You Do, and the second one he did, the only second one he directed, was the film I was in. And that film ended up being called Larry Crown. So a day goes by, and I get a phone call. It's Judy. And Judy says, Luis, congratulations. Tom loved your tape. He would love to give you the part of one of the students in the class that'll probably be giving like a speech, kind of like what you did. You're going to be on set for about 2 months. You're going to be part of this scooter gang. And he's really excited to have you. I don't quote me. I mean, this was almost 10 years ago now. Basically, this is what she was saying. And I was like, I clearly remember I told her, I'm like, okay, can you just say that one more time? And the line that she had said that I asked her to repeat was, Tom would love for you to be in the movie. I was like, can you say that one more time? She said, of course, darling, Tom would love for you to be in the movie. So she hangs up, and I'm on the deck of our apartment with Nick, and I start flipping out. I'm like, holy, yeah! I just got a part in a Tom Hanks movie. I just got a part in an offer in a Tom Hanks movie. She said she was gonna call me back and send me the details, and started asking me about my SAG and da 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 da. And I was like, I'm not even SAG. I have no idea. I don't know how to answer any of these questions. But before any of those things were answered, she hung up. So I'm freaking out with just sheer happiness. I'm like, who do I call first? Obviously, Mom, right? So as I pick up the phone to call Mom, I get the same phone number calling me, and it's Judy again. And she says, Luis, I'm really, really sorry. And I'm like, what? What could you possibly be sorry about? I mean, I just got, there's nothing you could possibly say that would dampen my spirits. And she's like, well, unfortunately, literally within the last 3 minutes that since I hung up with you, another actor became available that Tom originally wanted for the part. And he originally wanted him because he had worked with him before in the Pacific. That actor, Rami Malek. So I got a part taken from me, unbeknownst to him, I'm sure. I have a feeling it was just probably just like negotiations. I think he had conflicts with another thing because he was doing another project. That project fell through. He became available literally at the last minute after they, I guess, negotiated that it wasn't going to happen. I was the first guy that they had on the list. They called me, told me I had the part, and then took it away from me. That is like my quintessential Hollywood story. That's sort of the very long version of it. I gave you a lot of details on it, but I mean, but what she said, she's like, look, you're still going to be in the Scooter Gang. You're going to be working on the film for a month, and you're going to be around Tom. He's going to be directing it. It'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a great experience, and I'll be in contact with you. She's like, I'm very sorry, but I was like, listen, Judy, it's not your fault. I get it. I totally understand. Although at the time, Rami Malek was not an Academy Award-winning actor. He was a very up-and-coming actor at the time. He did some amazing work in the Pacific. He was the Mummy, at the time of that movie, Night at the Museum. I think he was the Mummy. Anyway, so that was my introduction into Hollywood. And since then, I've got an agent. I've done a lot of little parts. A lot of little parts. I've done some films. I've got my IMDb. Again, if you want to check out my IMDb, go to my website. It's got all of my credits there. You're more than welcome to take a look at them. The surprisingly, and I hopefully one day want to ask, I have a feeling it probably just had to do with a union status thing, or once you make somebody a featured extra, the pay grade goes differently, the residuals are different. My Tom Hanks film, Larry Crown, is uncredited, but I'm on the movie poster. I was in the film. I got to work with him for a month. It was a lot of fun. And it was sort of the validation that I had made the right decision to become an actor. I had to make the right decision to follow my dream of doing something in the arts. It was a wonderful experience. It's something I'll never, ever, ever forget. And I hope, fingers crossed, I get to work with him again one day. That would be awesome. We'll see. That's the beauty of the business, is sometimes you never see these people again, and sometimes you see them quite often. So that's sort of my journey in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in between there that I didn't get into. So now you know who I am. A basic idea of how I got here in front of you today. The other story I wanted to tell you from my childhood, obviously, is the time I personally saw a UFO. So this is a moment that obviously changed my life forever. Weirdly enough, I remember in elementary school, before I even saw this thing, I saw it when I was 13 years old. But even in elementary school, I remember I did a science project, a couple of science projects having to do with the topic, that I think the teachers gave me like a C plus or C minus on, because it was just weird, for an elementary school kid to do a topic, a science project, those foldable boards about UFOs. And I went and I asked my entire class, I did like a survey, who believes, who doesn't, why not. And I tried to make like a scientific survey of how many people believe in the fourth grade that UFOs are real. I made a model UFO out of clay that ended up melting. So it was like, it was, I've been entrenched in the topic. I remember whenever we would go to the library, the very first place I would go would be to the section of, Bigfoots and UFOs and ghosts and stuff like that. But the one that really, really stuck with me, the one that always sort of struck me as just there's something about it that just seems very plausible, that it could be happening. But again, I don't want to push a narrative or an idea here. I don't know what it is, but I mean, there are a lot of ideas. We'll get into those. But basically I wanted to talk about my sighting, my close encounter of, I guess would be the second kind, because it was a really close sighting. It was in front of a lot of people. Basically, I was 13 years old. I was living in Cooper City, Florida, and we had gone to, me and my best friend at the time, Tony, we had gone to his friend's birthday party. And she lived in Cooper City, Florida at the time, especially. Now this land is almost gone. It's got houses on it now, but at the time, a lot of people out there, and still do, own huge 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acre plots of land that will be lined up next to a cow field, or down a dirt road like half a mile, and then it's the only house down there. So it would have these very interesting sort of pockets of just ruralness. There's nothing there. It's very, very isolated, very dark. There's not a lot of street lights, and it would be 2 or 3 miles away from a very cookie cutter middle class neighborhoods. So it had a mixture of farm meets suburbia, if that makes sense. So we were on this farm / there were chickens on it, there were cows on it. I don't think they were farmers, but it was that kind of place. They had a whole bunch of people over. It was a huge party. It was her, if I'm not mistaken, 13th birthday party. So at the time, I was a kid, drinking alcohol, doing drugs. None of that stuff was happening in my childhood. That's something that happened way later. But I vividly remember around 10, 15, and this was pretty late for me to be at a party, but it was like one of those rare occasions where we had permission to be out. Couldn't tell you why, but I was there. It was pretty late at night. Me and my friend were sort of at the edge of a party, and we look out into the field, and we see one of his friends, a girl, I can't remember her name, but she's standing there, she's looking up, and we walk over, and we're like, what are you looking at? And she points in the sky, she's like, I'm looking at that light right there. She's like, it feels like it's been there forever, for like 15, 20, 30 minutes. And we're like, well, you haven't been here that long. And we're looking at it, and at first it looked like a star or something, but then it started moving. And moving in a very peculiar way. Now, at first I was like, well, maybe it's a blimp, because we didn't live that far from a major stadium. At the time, it was called Joe Robbie Stadium, or maybe Pro Player Stadium. I don't know. The stadium's had like 14 billion names, but I was like, well, maybe it's a blimp. And because sometimes if you're looking at a blimp, it's got a ominous presence about it. But if you capture it at the right angle, it could look very, very strange. So when I was looking at it, I was like, man, I'm just waiting for this thing to turn so I could see that Goodyear thing that tells me it's a blimp. It doesn't do that. So this is where my 27-year-old memory of this thing starts to get a little fuzzy. From that point in the sky, the next thing I remember is this thing is hovering over the field, maybe 300 to 400 yards away from us, somewhere in that range. And I'd say about 200 feet off the ground. Very, very low, very close. From what I remember, it was like if you took a small bowl and you put it on top of a big bowl, you put it underneath a big bowl and you met them, like the rims together. That's what it looked like in the sky. It was very strange. I actually, weirdly enough, not weirdly, but I did a little painting of it. And mind you, this is terrible. So this is what I saw. So it was smaller on the bottom, bowed out to something bigger on the top that came back in. Like these lines and these portholes, I don't remember seeing those, honestly. Those are things I think that my memory just added, or I added in when I was painting this, because really what I remember is that the middle of it was bright white. And then the aura, the outside of it, was like a green haze. And on top of it, it had this blinking light that was just weird. It was incredibly fast. It was like a strobe light. No sound. When it came that close to us, my first instinct was to start going through my Rolodex of what it isn't. So not an airplane, not a helicopter, not a blimp, not a satellite. And yes, I had seen satellites at that point. I'd been up to peaks of mountains where you can see satellites streaking across the sky. So I've seen those before. I could not wrap my brain around what this thing was. So then my very next instinct after that was, I want to get a better look, because it started to move behind these set of trees that lined the field. And as soon as we got behind the trees and I couldn't see it, I started running to a spot where I wanted to get a better look. And as soon as I got to that spot where I thought I could see the clearing in the trees, it was gone. Never saw it again. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. It was, I remember after seeing it, immediately went home and woke up my parents at 11 something at night and just started screaming at them what I had seen. They vaguely remember this happening, but they remember it did happen. They remember me coming into the room, waking them up, because I'd never done that before. Usually I was like going up the stairs very quietly to make sure that nobody thought I was home, especially in high school. But I just didn't want to wake anybody up. That night, I did not care. I wanted everybody to know what I had just seen. So that's my story. I wanted to share that with you guys because I'd never really told anybody that. This is sort of the first time I've shared that with anybody outside of my personal family, friends, people who were there, or, girlfriend or just people that are close to me, that have gotten that level with me. That's my experience. I wanted to tell you guys a story. I wanted to show you this terrible painting and sort of give you a little background about who I am, where this channel's coming from, what I wanted to do, how I want to educate you guys on not only, the topic of UFOs, which is weird to talk about. Again, it's like we're trying to break down the stigma of it, but also, getting to know the business that is acting, producing, writing. We'll hopefully have some fun stories when I have a guest here. Now that we're all set up, we're ready to go. The plan is to have some episodes for you by February. I don't have a date, but I want to say February. I'm feeling pretty confident. The idea, from a production standpoint, is I'd like to get 4 episodes in the bank and always have 4 episodes sitting there, just in case something happens. I need to take a break or a vacation or something, emergency comes up. There's still content that's coming your way. Because like I said, the goal, again, I'm new to this, but the goal is to get an episode every week for you guys, a new guest every week for you guys. I'm sure there'll probably be times where we repeat guests, but that's probably because we had a lot of fun or a great response from our audience, you guys. I will have, by the time you see this, we've already launched the website, the unidentifiedcelebrityreview.com. So definitely check it out. The link is in the description below. It's got everything you need to know about me, the YouTube channel, the podcast, my contact information if you want to book me as an actor or in a live performance of this show, because I plan on also producing a live version of this show, like an improv version of this show, where we interview someone live. We do some improv scenes based off their experience or story. And yeah, we just have a good time with it. So, wow, 52 minutes. This is exactly about the time that I wanted the show to be. So I think we got a lot of information out. In the next episode 2, 3, 4, 5, we're going to be having, I've got at least 4 guests. I guess I could tell you their names now. We'll be having writer and producer Seth Colton. We'll be having a writer from The Good Doctor, Brian Shin. We'll be having, I told you about him earlier, an amazing actor, Jake Matthews. The last person that I have lined up, at least for right now, is stand-up comedian Francis Cronin, my fellow Irish blood brother. He just did a charity event, his second, where first one where he walked from San Francisco to Los Angeles and to raise awareness for the homelessness epidemic. And now he just did the same thing in Ireland. So he just got back. We're going to talk to him about all of that and also some fun UFO weird stuff. So, you guys, thank you so much for sticking around. I know this episode was very self-indulgent. If there's anything that you have questions about, want to know, please email me, contact me through the website, contact me through YouTube, leave it in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Like the video, subscribe, tell your friends about it, ring the bell, so that way you are notified every time a new episode does drop. I think that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for the very, very first episode, introductory episode, very self-indulgent episode. But I'm glad you guys stuck with me. I'm glad you guys are still here for the Unidentified Celebrity Review. I'll see you guys next time. Adios. Unidentified.